Education when Dr. Ben Reitman started a hobo college on West Madison Street. Everybody was hopping freights back then. You hop a freight to Chicago, the hobo college. A U of C professor shows up and gives you a lecture. You could even get a hobo diploma. I've got a copy at home. Now that was replaced in the 1920s by the Dill Pickle Club, where you might end up talking with the poet Carl Sandburg, the writer Juna Barnes, the dancer Catherine Dunham, or the boxer Mr. Jack Johnson, not to mention the lawyer Clarence Darrow. The Dill Pickle Club replaced by the College of Complexes, the playground for people who think. They'll be meeting tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, as they've been doing for 55 years, and you're invited. During that lecture, there's a rebuttal period when anybody in the house, any age, can take the podium for 5 minutes and say what's on your mind. But I should let you know, they never stopped following the Hobo College motto. You never interrupt another speaker at the College of Complexes. It's please, only one fool at a time. On our right now, I urge you to take an inside tour of Chicago's train station. That neoclassical building in the distance is Union Station, 1925, Graham Anderson props in white. Go inside to see the travertine-clad ceiling, the beautiful marble staircases throughout. And if you want to get your kicks on Route 66, that legendary U.S. highway is Adams Street, right above your head. Now here's a photo op for later. You stand on Adams Street, you take a picture of Union Station. The right-hand crossing guard has a Highway 66 road marker attached to it. Why? Do people really need to know that? No, it's so you can get a cool photo with a Highway 66 road marker in it. Come back over here by Shoreline Water Taxi. Our dock is at 200 South Wacker by Harry Weiss of River Cottage fame. And then you will be ready for the tallest building in America, the 8th tallest in the world today. On the left, the Willis, formerly Sears Tower. Architect Bruce Graham. And from Bangladesh, first engineering partner for Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, Dr. Fazla Khan. Look way up to the 103rd floor skybox and wave to the people because it has a glass floor. A glass floor. Enter it, man, you're 103 floors up and you are walking on air. Suffer from a fear of heights, vertigo, man, you're 103 floors up, you're heaving in the air. Don't look down. Now, 3 summers ago, London-based insurance company, the Willis Group, took over 3 floors of the 110-story Sears Tower. That's a lot less than 51%, but they were given naming rights. I honor the new name, the Willis Tower. However, I'm a Chicagoan, and I'm astounded Mr. Richard Sears and Mr. Alva Roebuck and the long tradition Sears Company once had in the city of Chicago. Therefore, when we turn this boat around for a better photo opportunity, I will announce it again, but I will, like most Chicagoans I know, call it by its original name, the Sears Tower. And just for fun, I will call it the Sears Tower simultaneously using a musical technique from Kazil in tuba known as Tuvan double note throat singing. So just know when I say Sears later, I'll be using the Siget or the bird whistle style of Tuvan throat singing as opposed to the more common or the frog style of Tuvan. Hey, movie fans, you recognize the old Chicago Central Post Office on our right? Did you see The Dark Knight, the Batman movie, before he was rising like yeast? This was the Gotham City Bank. It also showed up in the robot movie Transformers 3. We can only hope they make a Transformers 4. Now, why on earth did we need such a gigantic building to handle the mail back in 1921? Maybe because the mail order catalog business was pretty much invented in Chicago in 1872 by that friend of the farmer, A. Montgomery Ward. There probably wasn't a farm kitchen table in America back in the old days didn't have that big old Montgomery Ward catalog right on the sideboard. Last year's catalog, that was usually out back for other uses. Now, Montgomery Ward, Sears and Roebuck, a lot of mail, but even without them, we would have built that post office. You know why? Because Chicago's a great American city of exaggeration. We're a kid with a chip on our shoulder. Go ahead, do it big, we'll do it big. It's 1921, largest post office on Earth, 2.7 million square feet, booyah. But the truth is, elevators slow things down. Waiting for elevators is like waiting for Godot. You know, you don't know if they're going to show up or not. So notice the new headquarters. It's actually much more streamlined. So what the post office was able to do was start consolidating operations. Now, the old building was abandoned by the post office in 1995. There were a lot of false starts. And then they sold it finally last summer for $24.8 million to one of the richest men in England, Mr. Bill Davies. He's announced some big dreams. He's talking about a high-end fashion mall, a 2,000-foot hotel, spending $3.5 billion over the next 10 years and turning this entire area into a worldwide shopping destination. Because the world really needs another worldwide shopping destination. I'm curious to see how much of that's actually going to come to pass. Now, if you look to your left, the skyline of tall buildings drops off because the business district, the Loop, is somewhat behind you. And realize this, you had borders to the business district. The river was the northern border. The lake was east. South and west, you were cut off by railroad tracks. And if you were in business, you wanted to squeeze downtown where the action was. Well, think of it this way, especially my younger passengers. Think back before cell phones, before email, dare I even say it, before text messaging. Remember when business was the art of the handshake, the deal. You met your customer not Facebook to Facebook, but face to face. You had two human beings in the same room. OMG, can you even imagine this? LOL, send. We had no choice in Chicago. We couldn't sprawl out. We had to sprawl up. That's why the vertical city came out here. And I tip my hat every day to Mr. Otis. Without his elevator, we'd still be on the ground floor. By the way, the Otis Elevator headquarters in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that's only a one-story building. That's my definition of irony for today. Can you tell me the architect of River City coming up on our left? I bet you can. It's from 1986. The clue is in the curve. It's Bertrand Goldberg, the same architect who did those corncob-shaped Marina City towers. Goldberg is much sculptor as architect. He was a modernist, but he thought outside the box, pun intended when I say that. He wrote in his journal in the 60s, "I am in rebellion against the straight line. I refuse to remake humanity in the image of a machine." So actually, he's inspired by nature. River City was inspired by a snake. A mythical river snake, and it would have looked serpentine if it actually been completed. This was only phase one. Bertrand's original plans had the building expanding 5 phases from here all the way down to the next bridge. A free thinker marching to his own different drummer. I put Bertrand Goldberg on the same plane as the great Antonio Gaudi. I see a similarity, kind of, perhaps an influence there. Oh, as we make this turn, it's hard to see in the waning light, but see that radio tower, and there's a squat building beyond the telephone poles, and you'll get just a little hint of orange, a little glimpse of orange on its eastern wall. That's the Chicago Fire Academy over on DeKalvin Street. And where do you think they built the Fire Academy, boyo? But they put it right on top of Patrick and Catherine O'Leary's farm now, didn't they? That's where the great Chicago fire started, when Daisy, that ornery heifer, kicked over a kerosene lantern and almost destroyed us all. Or did she? Now, yes, the Fire Academy actually sits on top of what was the O'Leary farm, where the fire really did start, right there. But let's clear something up. You must forgive the cow. Daisy the cow was framed. She didn't do it. They set her up. She was a smart cow. She got out of that barn to live another day. No one really knows how the Great Chicago Fire started. My favorite theory? Meteor shower. Hey, that's not that crazy. Do you realize there were 4 fires on October 8th, 1871? Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So we'll never really know. Tower! It's 1,451 feet, 1,727 if you count the antenna. We don't get to count the antenna because the Council on Tall Buildings and the Urban Habitat calls antennas add-ons. We don't need the antenna. We were still the tallest building in the world for 22 years. They're using a construction technique called a bundled tube system. Think of the building like a bundle of sticks wrapped together for strength. It's actually made up of 9 contiguous steel tubes, each is 75 foot square. 2 will stop at 50 floors, 2 at 66, 3 at 90. The final 2, 110 stories. With that observation deck, you can look down and get sick in on floor 103. Now, why terminate the different sections? This is strategic. You want to reduce the mass of the building as you go higher because you're in the Windy City. And although the Windy City nickname pertains to how we won't stop bragging about Chicago, present company included, it is a windy city with 81 mile an hour wind shear effect, so you're dealing with that. Now, personally, I look at the Sears Tower and I think about the great Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, writing in the Tao Te Ching, can one learn to yield and overcome? Can you bend and yet remain straight? And then I say, aha, my Sears Tower is following the Tao. For do you realize this building has the ability to bend and yet remain straight? Gale force winds cannot topple it, but happily it can sway like a leaf 3 feet left to right. If you're caught up there in a windstorm, you'd be safe but dizzy. Now, we lost the tallest building title in 1996 when the Petronas Towers, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, twin office towers not as tall as the Sears Tower, used the spire trick. 2 25-foot spires allowed them to claim 1,483 feet. Now, Petronas held out till 2005. Taipei 101 of Taiwan, beautiful building, goes up to 1,671 feet. Taipei is surpassed in 2007 by the Burj Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, 2,400 feet. In 2010, the Burj Dubai is renamed the Burj Khalifa of Dubai. They had to get all new t-shirts in the gift shop. And they added extra height. The tallest building in the world today, the Burj Khalifa of Dubai, it's 2,717 feet. It's not in Chicago. Do not fret and do not cry. Who is the architect of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai? Chicago guy, Adrian Smith, who did the NBC Tower and the Trump Hotel, also was architect of the Burj Khalifa of Dubai. Look all the way over to the right now, we find an aluminum statue. That is Ceres, Roman goddess of grain, giving us the word cereal from in English. She is perched atop the Art Deco Chicago Board of Trade, 1930. It's 605 feet, tallest building in Chicago for 25 years. Sculptor John Storrs never gave the statue a face. Who would see it way up there was the common thinking. But actually, you know what? Art Deco statues don't have faces, and you know this. Oscar, the Academy Award, that's Art Deco, no features. Oh, by the way, the Oscars are made for Hollywood? By who? Chicago, of course. They're still manufactured right here. Now, on our right, look at the annex to the Board of Trade. Now, the Board of Trade is Art Deco from 1930. You have the streamlined setbacks and everything. Now, the annex is the same, except it's done with modern materials by a world-class architect from Germany named Helmut Jahn. Look how Jahn recapitulates a pyramid roof, the dramatic set. Postmodern as well. That's its most distinctive feature, a 10-story high dome of fluorescent light. Now, late at night, when almost 2,000 lamps are illuminated up there, we Chicagoans sometimes call this building the White Castle. Are we longing for some Game of Thrones medieval age pass with that nickname? No. We're longing for sliders, White Castle hamburgers. I'm telling you, the first time I was coming back into Chicago from the airport once, it was lit up at night, my stomach started rumbling. It looks like this very famous Midwestern restaurant chain called the White Castle, which also has a neo-Gothic facade. But friends, when I compare that building to a hamburger joint, I'm not making some silly joke. The connection, the White Castle restaurant and 311 South Wacker were both modeled after one of the few buildings which predate and escaped the Great Chicago Fire. Has anyone been downtown to the Water Tower yet in Chicago and Michigan Avenue? It's a little yellow castle that was really a standpipe for the water pumping station of 1869. But in the fire of 1871, that wiped out that neighborhood. But somehow the water tower escaped, so it's become a symbol of Chicago's spirit ever since. And you can go inside it. It is actually a visitor center today. Hey, gaze up at the Sears Tower one more time and imagine, friends, that you are French. Your name is Alain Robert, but the world calls you Spider-Man. Alain Robert, the French daredevil, August 1999, like a human fly, he free climbed the Sears Tower in 2 hours to be arrested for criminal trespass and performing an aerial show without using a net. So he went to San Francisco, climbed the Golden Gate Bridge, home to Paris, the Eiffel Tower, Kuala Lumpur, Petronas Towers, Taipei 101 of Taiwan. He's pushing 50 years of age, so where was he last spring? Hanging off the spire on top of the Burj Khalifa of Dubai. Hey, let's consider the mind of building climber Alain Robert, how he looks at the universe. Because what is architecture? If it is not, very simply put, the way that we interact with the space that we live in, that we inhabit. What I mean by this is you or I, we look at a building and we say beauty, we say function. Alain Robert looks at the building and says, cool, another obstacle to help me get over my fear of heights. He suffers from vertigo. Should we all climb a tall building like Mr. Robert? Of course not. I am, however, suggesting it never hurts to see universe with new eyes. I learned to think this way from a man who always said universe on spaceship Earth. He seemed to be a verb when he took a truncated icosahedron based on the tetrahedron, dropped the exchange center. Two 40-story office towers flank what was once a 40,000 square foot column-free trading floor. Ceiling struts totally supported by the load-bearing walls on either end. However, look what they did for extra office space. The top 34 stories cantilevered out, send weight down as well. You have a construction problem. The towers are too heavy. Pour them straight, natural shifting would occur, and they tilt in. So during the building phase, the structural engineering firm of Alfred Benesch and Company made a tiny change. Floor plates pulled out 1/8 inch from ground to midpoint. Then they reversed that. They pushed them back in towards the top. They bow them out like a giant version of that toy game Jenga. And what happens now? It realigns on its own. That building is absolutely plumb. Look at all the detail in the Civic Opera building to your right. Native American motifs show up in American-style Art Deco. It's a theater. We have comedy and tragedy masks, musical instruments. It's not Civic Opera building, by the way. That's just a popular typeface of the day, replacing the U with a V. With its surrounding towers. Indeed, it looks like a giant chair. Earning its nickname in 1928, Insull's throne. The man who commissioned it, Sam Insull, was the king of electricity. He put everyone in the Midwest on the power grid. Now, Insull's throne is facing west, turning its back on the east. Why? Well, some tour guides would say because of Sam's daughter, an opera singer. She had auditioned for the New York Opera, but they turned her down. Papa Sam, it was said, was so mad that he would build an entire building in the shape of a chair so he could turn his back on New York City for not recognizing his daughter's singing talent. And that, my friends, I would call a story. I wouldn't really believe a word of that story, but tour guides have been telling it for 50 years. They love it. Yes, Art Deco looks like a chair. There is a physical and a mundane reason why. We'll discuss it later. Right now, Randolph Street. Take a short walk west to the corner of Randolph and Des Plaines. Photographers, you can take a picture out there of Mary Braga's sculpture, which commemorates the most famous labor event in America's history. It happened in May 4th, 1886. It was called the Haymarket Affair, when the labor activists right here in Chicago were leading the fight in America for the 8-hour workday. 2 workers killed, McCormick Reaper Works, the night before. Next night, city-sanctioned protests out at the Haymarket. Carter Harrison, the mayor of Chicago, attended that rally. He called it tame. He advised Captain Bonfield of the Chicago police, keep an eye on things but let it die down. Instead, the mayor goes home. Bonfield fears trouble. He sends 175 armed policemen in to give the bum's rush to the protesting workers. Suddenly, some loose cannon lobs a bomb into the crowd. Shooting commences. See how the column takes you up and then you come to a square and it's exposed. It looks almost like a clock face. So it's a ghost image of the clock face of the real clock, the Boeing building across the river. So when you see those 2 columns, can you see what I'm talking about from this angle? It makes it like 2 sentinel posts from the Boeing building, and then over here, they're paying attention 14 years apart. And then come to their middle building, and obviously 333 West Wacker Drive, 1983, which was the revitalization of downtown Chicago as a business district. Everything is about the river. The arc mimics the wind we take with a boat. The glass reflects architecture and skyline. Nautical circles in the lobby housing the mechanicals. Now follow that nautical circle as it becomes a window motif on 225 West Wacker. Same firm, very different style. If you take a picture of these 2 buildings side by side, it's almost a textbook picture of a firm transitioning from modernism to postmodernism. Let's go back to the other side of the river to the Merchandise Mart. I don't want to miss the heads along the bank, which David Letterman facetiously called the Pez Hall of Fame. They're not candy dispensers. Those are the merchant princes of Chicago. You could go up there and say hello to Mr. F.W. Woolworth, Marshall Field, A. Montgomery Ward, Julius Rosenwald, Robert Wood of Sears, Edward Filey in the Filey's Bargain Basement, John Wanamaker, who came up with the department store concept, and finally Mr. A. Hartford, who started the A&P grocery store chain. A&P, the name of the grocery store, as well as the name of the short story set in an A&P by the writer. Anyone? John Updike. One of the best short stories ever written. Very succinct. Hey, on the right, we're looking at the world's first bi-level roadway, Wacker Drive. Burnham conceived it, his co-author Edward Bennett and Charles Wacker completed it in 1926. We use every inch of space in downtown Chicago. If we're not going up and up and up, we'll